Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about something that is really important to me and has really changed my life, and that is Jankum.
There's a new way for your kids to get high. They're using raw sewage.
I couldn't imagine doing something like that. Sounds pretty sick to me.
Honestly, they need to find something better to do with their life. Seriously.
Something new, something stimulating, something different.
There's a lot of people that say it's a hoax or it's not real or it's just made up or whatever. Now let's just get this out of the way first, so you can laugh it all off or whatever, You won't be laughing once you experience what I have and have your life change. But, it's human waste. It's, shit.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your favorite canceled stand-up comedian, Josh Denny, here on a Sunday episode of Jankum. Now, we usually reserve these streams for Mondays when we're trying to make your Monday a little less shitty, but we got a special guest this week, and I'm excited to have him on. This is our second episode in the weekend, so it's been a busy weekend. We had Adam Nutter on Friday's show, and we have a guest here today. I've been very excited to have him on for a while. Been a big fan. I know a lot of you guys are big fans as well. Everybody, welcome into the stream, Misha Mansoor, everybody.
Hey, what's up?
Clap action. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going good. Just huffing some Jenkum over here, just having a good time, Ooh.
It's at least you know the reference, because it is a very sort of like deep cut internet reference.
Well, I'm in a band, and we did tour in a van at one point. We didn't have money for drugs, so you do what you have to do.
My favorite thing about the concept is that it was essentially this fake internet meme thing that started, and it caught fire so much that the news picked it up and started reporting on it as if it was a real epidemic to worry about.
Well, slow news day or whatever. They got to have something to report. Also, I hate to interrupt this. We have a very important message. There's a huge fan of mine in the comments right now, and he has a quick question. He wants to know why you banned him from his Discord.
Oh, I have no idea. Discord. I have no idea.
Well, there you have the answer. Hey, I tried. I did what I could. All right, moving right along.
I have no idea how he got banned from my Discord. He's probably being a dick.
Stop being a dick, dude.
Come on. The reason. So it's always fun when people come in. They go, "Jankum, it's like a thing about poop." It's like, no. But to me, it's a great metaphor for everything that's on the internet. It's just we're all just talking shit about whatever.
Pretty much. Hey, I got a shout out. I got thanks. I've done my good deed for the day.
There you go.
Now I can be an asshole.
You got into the deep cuts there. So we talked a little bit before the stream, and I've been a long time Periphery fan, and then I became more of a Misha fan as I started watching some of your interviews and stuff, and finding out that, like, dude, we have very similar stories about like how we got started. We're around the same age. We finished school at the same time. And for people that haven't seen, any interviews or talked to you about that, like, what was your kind of journey coming out of school at that time when, you're looking at your future and you're playing music? Now, were you really into music at an early age, or did it start more like as a teenager?
It's more as a teenager. I remember we had a family friend visiting from Australia. This was back in the day. You kids won't remember. There were these things called compact discs, and they came in binders. You remember the fucking
Dude, I had them.
Can I swear?
Had them stolen out of my car. Yeah, of course you can swear.
Okay, yeah. The fucking binders, because apparently it was really important to say fucking right there. Anyways, you had these big fucking binders filled with, and it was basically your personality that you could like scroll through, right? And you could judge people based off what they had or ask to borrow stuff, because this is how you listen to music back in the day. Yeah. Anyways, he was showing me some stuff. I'm the oldest. I didn't really have like friends who were into music or anyone to really show me the way. So I had a bit of a late start with that. And he showed me Nirvana and The Offspring and stuff like that. He showed me Nevermind and stuff. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, this is what I've always wanted. Like, I didn't know this existed, kind of changed my life. So as of then, I was probably like 12, 13 at the time.
Yeah, there was a show you did a while back where you were trying to remember the Offspring album. And I wanted to jump through the screen. Oh, was it Ixnay? Okay, yeah. So for me, it was Smash. Yeah, and that was the first album I learned entirely on guitar. That was really? That's what got me into hard rock music.
So I heard. So here's the thing: is I heard Smash. That he also had Smash, but then he left, and my friend just had Ixnay on the Hombre. So this is how these things worked. It's just whatever your
Yeah.
friends had was what you got. It wasn't like you got to choose what your favorite Spotify album was, you know? Like it was just whatever was available. Hopefully your parents didn't find out you were listening to Marilyn Manson because they didn't really like that.
I know,
you know,
right?
Because Antichrist Superstar doesn't really look great for like, 12, 13-year-old to be listening to. But I love that album, just a lot of that kind of stuff where it was just like, man, these are sounds and concepts I'd never really encountered before. And that's what got the gears turning, really,
Yeah, I'd say the first 3 albums for me that kind of shaped who I was as a musician was like the Smash album made me want to be the Smash album made me want to play, like, be a musician, play guitar, be in a band. Like, that was the first time I was like, oh, this shit's really cool. I got a guitar when I was 7, so this would have been 1990. And I started learning, and my dad was a musician, and I started playing around and just kind of goofing around. And it wasn't until, like, I heard Smash that I was like, no, now I want to play songs,
Yeah.
And then after that, strangely enough, the 2 albums that I think influenced me, like, going like, oh, no, now this is the kind of music that I want to play, was Seven Dust's first album and Limp Bizkit's first album. And those were the like $3 Bill. Those were the first 2 albums I heard where I was like, what is this? Like, this is insane.
Just the birth of new metal right there.
Yeah, and I was a total new metal kid. Like I went through like Metallica phase and stuff like that, but like my favorite bands when I was coming up were like Taproot and Head PE and then I even liked like more mellows. Like I go deep cuts. Like I'll still pop in Darwin's Waiting Room and Trigger Point Records and
see, I don't even know that.
Yeah, see, so it's like I have like I'm like an encyclopedia of early 2000s new metal bands.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't know if it was just anyone who kind of got into metal or it was just my scene then, but like I got really into new metal. I was more into like the Korn, Limp Bizkit side of things. The second album was that Significant Other.
Yeah.
All stuff which I'll say, like, admittedly hasn't really withstood the test of time for me. Like, but it also got me into bands like Deftones, which did.
Yeah.
And Tool, at least the earlier Tool albums, which I like a lot still. So there's some stuff that and early Incubus and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to see the stuff that was very much, because it's interesting because Korn was probably my favorite band at the time.
Yeah.
But that didn't really last. And like Deftones was maybe second or third, but like to this day, Deftones still one of my favorite bands ever of all time.
Senior year of high school, I didn't drop out, but I pretty much did. My friends and I were in a band, and we would literally skip school and drive to Minneapolis to the Quest Club in Minneapolis, and just go see concerts like 3 times a week. And we went up and we saw so many bands, dude. We saw, people will laugh, but we saw Nickelback for $2.
Wow.
At the Quest Club, they were the opening band for 2 bands that don't exist anymore.
That's kind of
I remember watching them live and going like, holy shit, this band is incredible. Like, these guys are going places.
Yeah, right.
And this was in like 99 or 2000. Like, this was right as their very first record was coming out, and it was like they were clearly destined for arenas very quickly.
Right.
And then we saw so many bands. I got to meet so many bands. Like, I met the dudes in Taproot and got to know them very well back then. And then the guys in Alien Ant Farm, they were just like a goofy, fun band to watch.
I remember both of those bands. Yeah.
Their bass player Ty is one of the best bass players I've ever seen in my entire life.
Alien Ant Farm's bass player.
Yeah, he's classically trained. He was producing for a while, but just like he literally plays some of the most complicated stuff and just makes it look effortless.
Right. One of those. Yeah,
something I think you've been accused of too, right?
No. I'm not actually good at music. I just enjoy it. And I'm around like actual real musicians a lot of the time, so I know my place.
Yeah, so we would skip school and we'd go to concerts, and then we just fell in love with music. I saw Deftones, I saw Head PE. And that was where I was like, I'm all in on music. I'm going to be a band guy. And then, then what happens is you graduate high school and you find out it's really fucking hard to keep a band together. Because,
oh my God,
everybody
keep a band together. It's impossible to even start a band.
Dude,
get people to show up.
I mean,
Care.
our band got chewed up so quickly. Like our drummer, who was incredible, he was like an old school '80s metal drummer, so he got me into bands like Soilwork and Metallica, and he was like kind of they were about 10 years older than us, our drummer and our singer. So those guys got us into other stuff,
Showing you the real shit.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Who was COC?
Oh, Corrosion of Conformity?
Yes, yeah, got me into that band. I couldn't remember what it stood for, but I remember they got
Yeah.
us into that band for a while. So, but we were playing, and then that dude got married and had kids, and like was like, I can't play anymore. And then my bass player was like, I'm going back to school to be a civil engineer because there's no money in music. And then that was when I got into doing stand up, and I was like, oh, I'm actually much better at this than I am at music. And then I kind of just never went back to jamming or playing in bands after that.
Who is that? There's a stand-up who said like every stand-up wants to be a musician, every musician wants to be a stand-up comedian.
Dana Carvey.
Was it Dana Carvey who said that?
Yeah, it was when he did the chopping broccoli in his special all those years ago.
Yeah, but it's so true. It's like it's such parallel worlds. Like I love stand-up comedians. I'll just go to a comedy show and see people I've never even heard of and have a great time. But like
that's what's so great about New York and Los Angeles is they have these showcase clubs. So you can go, if you're in New York, you can go to the Cellar and you'll see like 20 amazing comics. If you're in LA, you'll go to the Store or the Improv and you'll see like 20 amazing comics.
Yeah.
Whereas like the rest of the country, you have more traditional comedy clubs where it's like an open, a middle, and a headliner.
Right.
On the coast, you get these sort of showcase clubs and you can see a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. Like that to me is, I guess it's maybe the equivalent of like going to see like local bands or bands that are like up and coming or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm so jaded with music, but I still find it fascinating with comedy. And it's also something that like I can't think of anything more terrifying than having to go up on stage by myself and tell jokes. Like
yeah, and see for me, I never really had stage fright because of playing in a bit. So like the first time I ever played music in front of people was at a school assembly to promote we had a battle of the bands my junior year. And I played in 2 of the bands in the Battle of the Bands.
Wow.
And one of them was a punk band called Off Center. And then the other was my band that was called Syzygy. And we just played covers in Syzygy. And in Off Center, we played originals and we played some punk covers. But I'll never forget, the first song I ever played in front of people was My Own Summer by Deftones.
Oh, really?
Because it was the only thing the school approved that we sent them for songs we wanted to play. And I had to play it in front of my entire school of 2,600 kids. So like, it was like, dude, you better fucking figure out your stage fright real quick.
Yeah.
And
I did a Battle of the Bands thing in high school as well. I'm trying to remember why we did a Deftones song as well. I don't know why we chose 7 words, but we chose 7 words.
Oh, that's a great one.
But it's a really bad idea because the chorus is just him saying suck, 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 suck. But it totally sounds like he's just saying fuck, fuck,
yeah.
Fuck. And like that's 100% what everyone. So as soon as the chorus came, you just saw everyone's eyes like, I don't think this is cool. I don't think. Why did we approve this or whatever? We're just cut immediately.
Yeah, and the kid that played drums, that was like he was kind of like an early. He was like our high school's Trent Reznor. He played every instrument. He played drums and sang in his own punk band.
Oh,
it was
wow.
insane. And his name was Brandon Krause. Shout outs to Brandon Krause, an incredible musician. And, it was like kind of that small town story. Like his dad was a musician and then owned like the music store in town. And he grew up just playing everything. And
had all the instruments.
Dude,
there,
you'd go over his house. It was like a guitar center. You're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we would play punk songs and he would write originals and stuff. But he was like, we'll just play Deftones. Everybody in our school likes that. Like we had a very white stoner school in southern Minnesota. So like everybody was into rock music. There was like very little hip hop culture. Like we had like 2 black kids in our school, in our graduating class, and they were both adopted by white people. But that was my friend who we listened to hip hop and we listened to so I introduced him to bands like Rage Against the Machine and Head PE and like bands that had kind of like rap rock mixtures. And he would introduce me he got me into like Busta Rhymes and NERD and Neptunes and all that stuff. So, but it was it was funny how I went from growing up on the East Coast where everything mainstream culture was very much like, hip hop related, New York kind of street culture, like Tribe Called Quest and DMX and all that stuff. And then I moved to the Midwest and everyone's like, we're all going to the Incubus concert on Friday. You know what I mean?
Wild.
So it was just a complete different kind of culture that
I did not grow up
with.
where people loved, like, you were definitely in your little group that liked metal and all that. People did not really like Deftones. Everyone loved Dave Matthews.
Oh god,
everyone loved Dave Matthews, who I'll give a shout out to Carter Beauford for being an incredible drummer, and at least like I got to hear like sick drumming, like, but man, that is not my music, man. That is not my music at all.
I went through all those phases of like grunge and everything. Like I never got into Nirvana. I was always more into Soundgarden and like Offspring. So I was into kind of the more punk and metal side of grunge than just like straight up grunge.
I loved Nirvana. I always loved Nirvana, especially like Nevermind and In Utero. Like those ones hold up for me still.
Yeah, what's funny is that it's an unpopular opinion that I think In Utero is a better record. I got my favorite songs are on that record, and I prefer it to Nevermind. But I didn't really get into Nirvana until I was like in my mid-20s.
Oh,
where
really?
I went back and listened to it, and I was like, wow, I have a whole new appreciation for this that I didn't when I was younger.
Yeah. I mean, I could actually probably agree with you on In Utero. So I always have this thing where with bands, I'll say like, this is my favorite, but this is their best, and they might not be the same album. Quick example, Meshuggah. Chaos Sphere is my favorite album. Destroy and Erase and Prove is their best album.
Right.
Like, and I can acknowledge this. So I'd say probably In Utero is Nirvana's best album, but Nevermind was like my introduction. It'll always have like it's very like visceral connection for me because it opened a door. It'll always be special. And I've noticed this happens a lot with fans, even with my band. Like their entry point to Periphery will be kind of always special in a way, and no other album, no matter how good it may be or how much they may like it, will ever be as special because it never can have that initial impact, that first, whatever that moment was where it all clicked. And I know that everyone has had this moment where it's like somebody's just clicked with the band. It's like, oh, I get this. Oh, I want to know everything about this. That's a really special moment. It's very, very hard to recreate with the same band. You almost have to find a new band to have that moment with,
Yeah, and I found out about Periphery because my buddies who are in the band 3 Pill Morning, they've been in way more metal bands than that. That's kind of like a I wouldn't say pop rock, but it's like popular alternative modern rock. But they've always been into like way heavier stuff. Like I learned about bands like 36 Crazy Fists and Killswitch Engage from those guys, and they got me into other stuff. But the very first song I heard from Periphery was All New Materials, and I was like, oh my God, this kind of melody with like heavy, hard music. I was like, this is what I was thinking back. I was like, this is what I was trying to create, like putting jazz into like new metal. And I could never find guys that could play it. Like I'd be like, no, it's more fills than it's necessarily a beat. Like you don't understand. And I remember just pulling my hair out trying to find musicians who could grasp the concept. And I was like, oh my God, this is like 10 times better than anything I could have ever imagined.
Well, I had a lot of trouble finding members. I was the original drummer for the band, and because drums were my first instrument, and I only really started playing guitar because when you're the drummer, you might remember this, but like when you're the drummer, the guitarists, they could leave their amps or they could take them home. And then they eventually just like, I'm gonna be here soon anyways. I'll just leave everything here so I don't have to carry it in and out. So I always had guitars and amps at my place, and I'd always kind of jam on them. My one friend had like this 4-track tape recorder and mics, which he brought over and he's like, I'll just leave this here too. So I just would experiment with that. Like, so I kind of like inherited a lot, or temporarily inherited a lot of gear, and I got more comfortable with that stuff through that. But I quickly realized I wasn't good enough at drums to play the stuff I want. So I was gonna have to become more of a guitarist. And man, it was really hard to find members, especially at first with this style of music. Nowadays it'd be easy because it's kind of a more established style. This like, you call it gent, or like just prog metal or whatever, like playing this.
I like how you say you call it gent, like you weren't at least the co-founder of the genre.
But it wasn't supposed to be a genre. It wasn't like, and it wasn't my word. It was Meshuggah's word. I was just on the Meshuggah forum, And it was like this inside joke. And anytime like, you know, you did your palm, you like, gent. And it's just, so I'd always like call whatever song I posted new genty song. It was just really tongue in cheek. And I think people who weren't in on the forum and just like sort of lurking just pick that up and they're like, oh, it's a genre. And it's like, no, that's silly. It's not. And I didn't invent it. Like,
yeah,
you know, but it's, I get that sort of, I get blamed for that sort of very inaccurately. That's definitely Meshuggah's fault. And that's their word. It's not our word. But
now, do you think it was a benefit to, developing your voice as a musician to not have other people jamming with you and to really be figuring out everything instrument by instrument?
It's really hard to say because it's kind of just the way it went, but it's more like necessity was the mother of invention there. And it was also like right around the time, I don't know if you're much of like a PC gamer or anything like that, but I had a gaming PC and it happened to have this sound card. I got like the nicest sound card you could get. Which had this 1/4-inch input, so I could plug in a guitar. Like I had this like cheap like Behringer V-amp modeler.
The first audio interface ever.
Well, that wasn't even an audio interface,
right? But I mean, it was like
no.
Right?
It was like a very very basic audio interface. Yeah, with like a 1/4-inch input, so I could basically plug my guitar. And this was right around the time where I could pirate Nuendo or Cubase. Everything was pirated. Thank you, pirate gods. But like. Tune Track had just started and they put out their first kit. It was the Meshuggah guys. That was their company. It was Drum Kit from Hell. And it was Thomas from Meshuggah's kit sampled. I imagine it's what they were using themselves for demoing. And they're like, we should sell this. And I had this very sort of ghetto rigged setup where I could actually do everything myself. And that just opened every door because it was like, wow, I could do this myself and not bother anyone. I don't have to have a band. I don't have to have a drummer who's competent enough to play it. I'll just program it realistically. And then, I could hopefully someday find a drummer that could actually pull this off. That was the plan. And what it did allow, kind of what you were saying earlier, like, in a way you felt like, oh, this is the music I wanted to create, but I couldn't find the people. So now I could create the music without finding the people and then let that, sort of be the thing that makes musicians gravitate towards it. Because anyone whose ears perked up, they'd be like, oh, like I'm into this. I could try this. And even still, it was hard because a lot of people had a lot of trouble wrapping their head around what it was that I was doing, whether it was rhythmically or whatever. It was just very strange. Most bands didn't sound like that. So most drummers, for example, and guitarists were not used to playing stuff like that. Nowadays,
they're like, I'll just treadmill the double kick all the way through it. That does it, right?
Right. Or even worse, have like very complex patterns. Like people just weren't really doing that. So yeah. It's not that they wouldn't have been capable, but it's just they didn't really set the bar for that. Nowadays, it'd be super easy to find anyone, like younger musicians with YouTube raising the bar for everyone and just being exposed to this. Your ear will be kind of attuned to it. You'll understand what's going on. But back at that,
yeah, I think I vented to you on Twitter about that. I was like, dude, where were these 20-year-old like phenomenal drummers from Russia and stuff on the internet? Like, where were they when I was trying to put a band together?
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story about that. Like, I think so much of this has to do with the bar, because I was like the bar that you set for yourself. Because like I was also a big Dream Theater fan. I got into Dream Theater, and they were that band where it was like, is this even possible? Like, this is impossible music. There's no way they could play it. Then you'd see the live DVD. It's like, oh my God, they're nailing this. They must be the best. So therefore, that was the bar. And it's like, man, if I could be as good as John Petrucci or whatever, right? But now you've got like, these YouTube kids who are young. So you see a 14-year-old or whatever shredding, and then you're like, well, that's the bar. And then if you're learning, you're like, all right, well, that's what I'm going to aim for. And people just aim a lot higher these days, and it encourages them to push further. So my brother, who's younger, I made sure he listened to Dream Theater and Sixth and, like all the bands I could show him. So when he started writing, even though he couldn't play guitar very well, he'd be writing in odd time signatures without even realizing it.
Right.
Writing kind of proggy stuff. And he had a friend who had been playing guitar way longer, but just listened to sort of like Green Day and pop punk and stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's about all he could play. So my brother, who'd been playing for about half the time, was playing stuff that like his friend who had way more experience just couldn't wrap his head around. So I think a lot of this is that sort of context.
I think I heard you say that on another episode, and it kind of made me a little misty because my brother passed away 2 years ago. He was 43. I'm 38, 6 years older than me. Yeah, he had battled alcoholism his whole life. But I will say this, it was the same thing. Like I had played guitar since I was 7. And I, you know, I got pretty good. Like I was probably the better of 2 guitar players in my high school, which I don't know how much that's saying, but I got pretty good at, like, pretty fast for a guy with short, stubby, fat guy fingers. And my brother literally got a Jackson Kelly in a pot deal, and in 6 months was a better guitar player than me. And I was just like, dude, what the fuck, man? Like, and that's the only kind of tragic thing about his passing is every time he applied himself to something, he was just prolific instantly.
Right.
And it was just like, dude, if you only could focus on one thing and apply yourself. And his passion was cars, and he became a mechanic and just got and motorcycles specifically. So he got into like engine building and stuff and got hyper obsessed at that and really good at that. But I was like, dude, you know, anything he focused on, he would instantly pick up and be, you know, incredible.
Yeah, well, you know, maybe you can relate to that to some degree as well. Like I know I can, where I was terrible in school, man. I was a terrible student.
Yeah.
And I think my parents really worried about me. They're like, man, this guy's, you know, what's he gonna do? And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But as soon as I had a goal in mind, like I said, I dropped out of college because I was like, this sucks, and I don't really see what the point is. I got a job at Radio Shack, but like I got to work on music in my free time, and that was the happiest I'd been in a long time, you know, because I felt like I was in control of my future. So I got really into it. And then Radio Shack was like selling electronics and cell phones and stuff like that, and I learned that if you just
I bought my first cell phone at a Radio Shack.
Nice.
Yeah.
You made someone some money.
Yeah,
but like, I noticed
my first Sprint. It was a Sanyo. It had like a blue screen.
That's funny. Yeah, man. It was probably around that same era. Like, I learned that the more that you learned about the products, the more you could just answer people's questions confidently, the better you were at selling. And I learned like sort of one of the fundamentals of selling, which is you're not trying to sell people shit they don't want, because they can return it. You don't get your commission.
Right.
You're trying to let people know about products they don't know exist, or let them know why this may actually solve a problem they didn't even realize they had. And the more you know about it, the more that you can be like, well, I know this. Well, actually, did you know that this blah, 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 blah. And so that helped me sell. And so I ended up doing pretty well there and not having to work as many hours to make the same as I would have doing a regular 9 to 5, you know, with a high school degree somewhere. And that gave me more time to work on music. But it was, you know, once I had a goal or a focus, I could hyper focus. I would work on music to like 4 a.m. and not get any sleep.
Says Josh still uses that first cell phone. Yeah, that'd be great. I wish I still had it. That'd be funny.
That probably lasts longer than your iPhones anyway, so you probably would still work.
We're
looking at comments. Do we have anything?
Yeah,
dude,
where was the one? Here's a good question.
Company, I can sponsor you.
Yeah, he goes, any inspiration from Trent Reznor's work on the Quake soundtrack?
I didn't know that Trent Reznor worked on the Quake soundtrack, so I can't tell if that's like a troll or if that's real. I have no idea what
that's supposed to be. But I was a big Trent Reznor fan for sure. My band was called Broken because I was such a big fan of the Broken EP, which was an early 9 Inch Nails thing. So yeah, that was that was like my first sort of foray into like electronic stuff, and then I got really into I got really into Dead Z and bands like Dead Z and Orgy and
the more gothy set. So I again, it was just not exposure, but like I was aware of 9 Inch Nails, but I would say I didn't even start to appreciate them until more recently.
Yeah.
I was always aware of it, and I've always thought that Trent Reznor was a pretty brilliant guy, like in all capacities. But and what I like about him is he's got a sound, like it's very recognizable.
Yeah.
Like, okay, apparently that Quake thing is real. I bet if I listened to it, I'd be like, oh yeah, totally sounds like him. That's really cool when you can do that with an artist, you know?
Okay. So I think I get what Jake was saying is, did you get inspiration from Reznor? Because Reznor did the Quake soundtrack. I didn't understand what they were at when I was asking that.
I didn't even know he did the Quake soundtrack.
Yeah,
and I don't even know what the Quake soundtrack sounds like.
Yeah, because you mentioned PC gaming, so I guess
I did play Quake. I just don't remember that. Like the first video game that really had where I started to notice the music, and that to this day has like inspires me, is Final Fantasy VII. Nobuo Uematsu, and like the composer for the whole Final Fantasy series. That's pretty nerdy stuff, I know, but like that was the first time where, like, you know, I was hearing these songs rendered by like the PlayStation engine, which is like not very good, but man, just compositionally was just incredible. And you're hearing these songs over and over the course of like a 40 or 50 hour game. And these themes, like, they're like, if I hear Eris's theme, I will tear up. Like, that's just a fact, you know?
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. And it made me realize, one, how this is a genre of music, especially after that, that's maybe underappreciated a little bit, because there's so much talent in there, but the way people consume it and listen to it is so different, because it's sort of while you're doing something else, but it's very repetitive. In a lot of these games, you'll hear these themes over and over and over, whereas you wouldn't really do that with most songs, you know? And when you're listening to a song, it's usually either you're listening to it or you're doing something with your life that isn't necessarily tied to that exact song in the same way it is with video game music. So I think it's a really special genre, and I still really appreciate video game music, especially when it's well done.
Yeah, I remember I was like an early. So one of the biggest problems that I always have had, and one thing that I think like was a big credit to your success, that I was bad at and am very bad at, is I'm very bad at adopting and embracing new technology when it comes up. So like, you know, in that time when you're like, oh, I figured out how to plug my guitar into my computer, like I would have never been that guy. I would have been like, you put it into a 5150 and that's what it fucking sounds. That's how it sounds, bro. Yeah. I was like a strange purist. And it even in many ways is like, it's a problem for me in my career now, because it's like, I'm always like, all right, I got to get into cameras. I got to get into film editing. I got to get into all this stuff. And I was very hesitant, but the pandemic kind of helped me with that of going like, all right, how do I kind of dig in and like really learn some of the technical side of this stuff that will help my business?
But if you think about what you just said, it was actually exactly what happened to me. It was out of necessity.
Yeah.
I didn't have the luxury of being a purist. I was just like, okay, well, I can like not be in bands and not make music, or I could just do it on my own and not bother anyone, because no one seems to really understand what I'm going for, and I can't. It's so hard to start a band and find a band. Here's a way to just do it and make some forward progress. And I think that happened with a lot of people in a lot of fields in the pandemic, because a lot of, you know, more social things were shut down. So we're seeing people streaming more and getting into sort of hobbies that could be done at home and whatever, just out of necessity. Yeah. A lot of my friends who are in bands started Twitch streaming. And, you know, it's just people being industrious, because you can't go out, you can't tour. And a lot of these guys have bills to pay, and they're like, all right, well, I can interact with fans. I have a fan base. Like, this is a good way to interact with them and make money. To the point where some of them are like, I know they're like, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to out them, but like, are like, you know, is touring really that lucrative anymore?
I think of somebody like Andrew Baina from Carcosa, which is really cool, because it's like, he has this massive YouTube following and makes a lot of money off of that and everything, and then could just use it to fund his band, and then they could do it however they want to do it. It's almost like that to me is maybe like the new playbook for if you don't want to play, like if you don't want to be the next Billie Eilish or the next Kanye West, and you want to play metal, or you want to play stuff that isn't really popular and isn't going to sell you a ton of records by comparison to like mainstream music, then going that YouTube route is a great way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting with both YouTube and Twitch that they have algorithms that are gameable, which is really interesting when you think about it, because think about like what you did, like stand-up comedian, musician, whatever. What you do is you go out there, you try it, you do what everyone else is doing, you hope it works out. And you could do everything right, but if you didn't get lucky, or if you did get lucky but you squandered your opportunity, or it was the wrong place, wrong time, whatever, there's a whole bunch of reasons that it couldn't work, even if you had all the sort of right elements.
Yeah, you really hit me with that when the trolls are pouring in now. You really hit me with that. People go pro cancel culture Uber driver. Yeah, that's right. No, you said that on a podcast or an interview before that really hit me when you said you got to get lucky, and then you can also still squander that opportunity. Yeah. And I know a lot of guys when I moved to LA that I had started doing open mics with them back in Chicago, and they came out here. They got an agent right away. They got signed right away. They got a half-hour Comedy Central Presents in the first year, and these are guys that are completely off the grid now. Like they haven't published any work in 10 years. They haven't done anything else. And it's like, I remember being super jealous of those guys and being like, fuck, man, like, I wish I had all those opportunities, and then they didn't maximize them. And in many ways, like I have some regrets over my time at the Food Network. Like one of them was my agent was like, I know you need this money to live off of, but you should spend it on a publicist so that you can get your name out there so that when the show ends, you don't go away. And I was like, yeah, but I can't afford it, man. So, but it might have been the wiser investment at the time to like,
it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. And I mean, the thing I was saying about Twitch and YouTube is that you have all these variables here, right? But now you turn one of these into a bit more of a constant because they have an algorithm that works a certain way. So you can watch people game these things. A good buddy of mine, Herman Lee from Dragon Force, he was telling me like kind of at the beginning of pandemic to get into Twitch, which I messed around with, and he was like, you have enough concurrent viewers to where you can actually, you've kind of skipped the hard part and you can build from there. You just have to do it full time. And he gave me the rules. He was like, do it at least 4 or 5 days a week, same time every day, at least 2 or 3 hours of stream. And I've watched him use that. That's it. You have to be interesting enough, and you have to have a personality where people will actually watch you. But what he does is just kind of hangs out. Like I thought it was like, oh, you need to have like 3 hours ready to go. It's like, no, you could just shoot the shit. I've watched him like turn that into this empire, like over the last couple of years, just following that. Like you can't do that with music. You can't do that with stand-up. You can't be like, okay, well, if you do this, and this over the next couple of years, it'll work. And I think that's awesome. I've seen a lot of my friends do that where they can work these algorithms because there are these defined things. It's this interesting relationship where it's good for YouTube and good for Twitch if you're successful. So they give you the keys to the castle and tell you exactly how to do it. As long as you're sort of interesting enough or offer something that people want to see, have the talent, if you will, which so many people have in stand-up comedy, music, whatever. But now if you have the talent, you can work it as long as you just follow these rules. I think that's kind of cool. It's a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, and some of it is leaning into that. Like I went through with my time with the Food Network, like to me, that was one of those situations where it was a lot of luck, right? I had done a couple things food related. I'd started a food-centric podcast that really hadn't even gotten any legs, and I just got discovered by these people. And then I really tried to kind of like clean it up and go to work and be like, okay, like I'm not going to squander this luck. I'm gonna I always think of the Alien Ant Farm song Wish, where they're just like we're gonna basically that song is about changing everything about you to make you more appealable. And I kind of let them do a lot of that just to be like, I can be a good company man, right? And then the show was successful, and I went back and was like, okay, I've been a good company man. Can I do more stuff and make more money? And they were like, go fuck yourself, kid.
Yeah, right.
So it was just like, it was just one of those things where I definitely had that sense of like, I don't want to squander the opportunity. But one of the things that I think was very interesting about your situation was, you sort of start the band yourself, get members, make music. And then when it came time to like record deal talk, you sort of held out and sort of said, I want to make sure we get the terms that we want. And in a lot of ways, I find that very admirable, because I think some of the greatest people who have made the greatest things have done that. Like Ricky Gervais famously talks about the fact that he refused to sell the original Office to BBC4 without having final edit. The guys from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia were like, we're not selling this show unless we can show run it and make all the decisions. And I remember feeling that way when you were like, I would not take a deal until we could own our music.
Yeah, because I knew the reputation of the industry, and I had a lot of friends who were in the industry, and it was great. It was free advice and it was practical advice. So I can't say it was like me being smart. It was me just asking questions of bands. Are like, oh, we got fucked because we signed this. We were 18. We didn't know what the fuck we were signing. We signed a 7-year album, a 7-album deal with like Victory Records. And it's like, oh shit, like that is horrible. That's your life and career there, basically. Clauses to look out for that could like shelve your album, like all these little things, tips. It was great. And then one of the things I realized, I was like, okay, I understand how in the past, if you need like, let's say a couple $100,000 to record your album and another couple $100,000 to market it and do music videos, because shit cost money back then, especially back then, All right, you're looking at $400,000 or $500,000. You're not going to go to a bank and get that. You know, you probably couldn't qualify for a $20,000 loan.
Right.
So your options are to go with this record deal. And yeah, the record label's like, we're gonna loan you $500,000. You're gonna give us some collateral. So we're gonna own your music. And this is this mutually beneficial arrangement. What was happening around the time that I was getting started was obviously everything was going to like digital, right? And CDs weren't selling.
The Napster thing was right around when I graduated high school in 2001.
Yeah. And like as a result, like the profits were way down and labels were scrambling. So they came up with this thing called the 360 deal, which was like one of the most
I remember
insidious things that they could do, where they were like, well, they normally just take out of your record sales. Now it's a partnership. Now they're going to take all 360 degrees
your merchandise,
of any money you fucking make, they're going to take their cut of, which was just like, wow. Like, of course, you know, when there's a change in the industry, the artist just gets fucked again. And I was like, there's no fucking way I'm ever going to sign. Everyone was signing these 360 deals. I was like, there's no fucking way. And then it's
happening in Hollywood now with comedians again. Like back in the golden era of Hollywood, you remember they would have like a so many picture deal with a studio, right. And then that kind of went away. And now that like comedians are making a lot of their money off of podcasting and other things, if you want to sign with a prominent management company or an agency, they're like, we want to own everything. We want a piece of everything.
Right.
So, yeah.
But because they're not making money otherwise. But what was happening was these archaic business models that had a lot of cash flow were losing that cash flow and like had these big buildings and tons of people on payroll. And anyone who started a smaller company and a more lean company could afford to be profitable, right? So these old school behemoths were just struggling to make ends meet, and that's all they could do. I'm there sitting there being like, I've recorded this album, I wrote, engineered, produced, recorded, mixed, mastered everything. Where we already outsourced and paid for the artwork. We're handing you a finished product. Your job is to now put this on shelves.
To
produce this and put it on shelves. You're gonna tell me that you're gonna own the fucking master? Because of that, you can go fuck yourself. Like that's insane. So it wasn't just like demanding something just to demand it. I was just like, this is illogical. This is completely irrational. This is a holdover of a bygone era. And you guys are just trying to like, strong arm me for like a loan of like 10, 15 grand. I was like, you know what? Keep your advance. I don't want the advance. Put this on shelves. That way, let's talk about this reasonably. It's not a gamble for you. What do you stand to lose? Oh, it doesn't work. You didn't put that much money into it,
and was that ever a point of contention in the band? Was it hard? And I know you mentioned other shows.
I think because I started the band and because I did everything and because it was a reasonable point of view, everyone agreed. They're like, yeah, that's ridiculous. And then it wasn't like I was being unreasonable. The thing is that every label was like, well, good luck getting that deal. No one's ever going to give you that deal. So we waited for 3 years watching all our friends' bands get signed and me wondering, like, am I fucking up? Like, is this how this ends? Like kind of.
How did you overcome that doubt?
I don't know. I'm just stubborn when it comes down to it. It's just like, it just felt wrong. It's just like, I'm not going to. And like, then you have like, the sunk cost fallacy to some degree. It's like, well, I've waited 2 years. I'm not gonna give in now. Like the deals aren't getting better. But eventually what happens is there was this smaller label called Sumerian Records, which was smaller at the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not small anymore.
But at the time they had only had a few bands and there were a few of our friends' bands. And because they were smaller, they had the maneuverability to offer us. I mean, I told Ash, like the label had many times, I was like, this is what it'll take. Give me a licensing deal. We'll just license the rights to the record, but it comes back to us ultimately. We're renting you our record. That's fine. And eventually he was like, all right, what's it going to take to get this done? Because he could see like all the other labels were circling. We talked to Roadrunner, we talked to Century Media, we talked to Nuclear, we talked to everybody. They're all just sort of circling, being like, and even in some cases being very honest. I remember Monty Connor, who's now the head of Nuclear Blast, but was the head of Roadrunner at the time. He was like, well, I'm going to be honest, I don't get your band. I don't really dig this music, but everyone at my label says I'm insane not to try to sign your band. I was like, well, I appreciate the honesty, but
yeah, they told CKY the same stuff.
Yeah, right. Like
they signed them.
But I always appreciated Monty's honesty with that. I think he's a good dude, and he was just like, yeah, like I don't get it, but apparently I'm crazy to not sign you guys. And eventually, like Ash like came around and was like, all right, what's it gonna take? And I was like, it's gonna take a licensing deal. And the other thing, you're gonna love this because I'm sure you've had to deal with your fair share of lawyers and lawyer speak. But
God,
you know,
yeah.
the
more than I care to have to deal with.
Right. And as they say, if it wasn't for lawyers, you wouldn't need lawyers, because you have terms like, you know, in the universe in perpetuity. So ours, you know, the rights, we narrowed that down just a smidge from the universe to the US. Because I was like, I don't even want Sumerian doing the world or even North America. I want them just doing the US where they're good. So we ended up signing, I think, to 5 labels initially. And the second we signed the Sumerian deal, every other label was like, all right, what can we get?
Yeah.
Or we didn't sign to 5 labels. We signed 5 separate deals of what it was, because Roadrunner was 3
globally,
territories.
right?
Yeah. Roadrunner was Australia, Europe, and Japan, and we were with Distort for Canada. So we had 5 separate deals, which is a bit of a mess, but it was just kind of the way I wanted to do it, to make sure that like every territory had a specialist for it, rather than just having Sumerian, who would have been very good in the States, but very poor everywhere else at that point in time.
Yeah, this is funny. So Kenny Falco says, "You two fancy yourselves real life lawyers."
Hell no, I'm not a lawyer. That's why I hire them, because they can translate what's being said in the contract.
I know.
What you want to have is you'll get a deal memo, you'll get the points, and then the lawyers kind of just make sure that. Also, dude, I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I see a lot of people saying that you were an Uber driver. Chat, tell me, what did he used to be an Uber driver?
Yeah,
because you never told me that you're an Uber. I don't fucking talk to Uber drivers. I actually have a serious. No, I'm not joking. I have a serious problem with that. So, chat, please let me know if this guy, because he said he never drove for Uber before we started. We were pretty clear about that, and I think he may be lying about that. I don't know, man. I see this chat's going. It's like every other comment is about how you're an Uber driver. You should be ashamed of yourself, man. You really should.
That's what they're telling
That's the worst thing that could ever happen to anyone. Is
I know the pecking order of worst jobs you could ever have is cum guzzler, cum cleaner, cum cleaner, cum guzzler, and then Uber driver.
Yeah, I would rather be both of those things full time, day job, night job, than be an Uber driver.
Oh, that's
I rock. So apparently the 2 things we've learned is that 3 things: Josh is cute, Misha, you rock, and you were an Uber driver.
Yes, I was.
Yes, the lowest.
What's amazing to me is I worked McDonald's in high school, which I think would be a way.
That's way worse.
That's way worse. I came home selling like hamburgers and in high school, by the way. Like, you think you're getting any pussy when you work at McDonald's in high school? Absolutely not.
Oh, a free egg McMuffin?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wasn't even that savvy. I was like, if I get free egg McMuffins, I'm keeping them shits.
Were you not
myself.
taking food? You weren't taking food?
No. Well, we ate on the job like fucking savages, but
they didn't let you
really
take stuff home.
No.
Really?
No, we were like, no, we could take like waste at the end of the night. Like, I would close the store at like 10:30, and we'd be home by like midnight. But yeah, we would take waste, but you would think I would be off McDonald's entirely, which I was for a while, but I mean, it's like crack.
You're on McDonald's, huh?
Yeah, I'm on.
Man, I can't fuck with fast food. It's too many years of touring and dollar menu.
Yeah.
Like, just because that's all we could afford in the beginning, you know? It's like, oh, everything here costs $1. This is great. And then life catches up with you, man.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, and I've had to cut back big time on doing like fast food or any of the stuff I love, because I don't know if I've always had it on a minimal level, but after I got COVID, I developed a really severe gluten allergy. And so now it's like, if I don't take an allergy pill and I have McDonald's, dude, I break out in hives and shit all over my neck.
Damn.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Probably worth it just for the bread. I'll say if I couldn't have gluten, I'd probably just end it.
Yeah, I've come very close. I mean, I have a girlfriend who loves me. That makes it very, very difficult to end it. But if something happened to her, I'd probably
like, well, I can't even have bread. What's the point?
Yeah. I mean, I still have it. I just deal with the misery of like being itchy and gross. So.
I would do it. I'd do the same. I'd do exactly the same.
I've just been chugging allergy pills like crazy. Anytime I eat the stuff I'm not supposed to eat, I'm just like, maybe if I take 2 Allegras, I'll be okay.
So you take Allegra to eat bread?
Yeah, dude.
I've never heard of this. This is crazy.
Yeah. And it just reduces the symptoms. Like, I don't get itchy behind the ears and stuff if I take it.
Fascinating. Yeah, I hope that never happens. Is that contagious?
No, you can't.
Good.
You can't.
Yeah,
you definitely can't. It also can't be audibly transmitted
via microphone. Good.
Yeah. So you break through, and to me, it's kind of like I always feel like those stories of breaking through like that are kind of like the Moneyball story, right? The old adage of the first one through the wall always gets bloody. And it's like now I imagine there are lots of other bands that are trying to copy that model, right?
Well, I think it just became a bit more yes and no. I think you have to be aware. So what I realize is that, like, you know, a lot of people like really ignore the business side of music business. I'm sure it's the same thing with comedy, where you probably know some people who are really fucking talented and just, you know, just fucking, you see them, you're like, Jesus Christ, you fucking own it. Like you're destroying it, but can't really work the business side. And that's where I started to realize like there are bands that are good at that and bands that aren't. So the ones that pay attention to that, you know, if you have leverage, you also have to have leverage. Like if no one gave a fuck, if we didn't have all these labels circling, like they'd have all just told us fuck ourselves, and I'd never have been in a, you know, it would never work. And you have to recognize your leverage in the deal too.
Was there something that happened that kind of gave you that label interest, or was there something that popped?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird, man. From posting all these demos on forums and at MySpace, if your audience remembers what the fuck was.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it.
But like that was the first sort of social media tool. That was before Facebook. And the interesting thing about MySpace was that there was a player. So like, you know, you could have your music just up there, right? So it was like social media for bands, basically. And
yeah, when I started doing stand-up in 2007, I think it was like a year later, maybe 6 months into me doing stand-up, MySpace had a comedy list. So it was like an order of like rankings.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like, I was like, dude, we got to crack the rankings. Like we got to get into the, and it was basically based on page hits and everything else. And
yeah,
I think one time we cracked the top 100, and that I was like, oh my God, I'm in the top 100. You know, it was
sure. But that's a big deal.
That was a big deal back then.
Yeah. And I remember there were certain bands. I think I remember like Job for a Cowboy was like a big MySpace band. It was just like millions of plays. Like, holy fuck. Like, that's insane. So I'm sure there's a lot of careers that were sort of launched off of MySpace and whatever. Mine wasn't sort of launched so much as like it just got interest. We got label interest from that.
Right.
And I don't know. My mom's very wary of everybody, and I think that I inherited that. So I was always just, whenever someone wants to do a deal with me, my first thought's like, how are you fucking me right now? You know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, oh, finally, you know, like it's finally. And I'm just like, this is probably a scam. How am I getting fucked?
Yeah, I'm about to be raped.
We're going to keep talking, and we're going to figure out if there's some mutually beneficial scenario here.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there is, you know, but oftentimes there's not. And I guess I'm kind of grateful for that. It's like, I'm once you have my trust, you'll have it, but it's very, very hard to get it at first because especially in this industry, it's just, you know, everyone's out to get you. Everyone's got an angle. Like the worst thing you could ever tell me is that you don't have an angle, you know, because I'll be like, all right, well, now you're full of shit and now I don't want anything to do with you, you know?
Yeah.
So as long as I understand, I think it's fine to have an angle because like the best deals are like where your angle and my angle are mutually beneficial. And then, so this is how it works. This is how this all adds up to where you get what you want and I get what I want, and it kind of works out. And that's what we did with the record deal.
That was the only way I ever learned how to be successful in business of any kind. Like, as I was telling you before we started working my way up the ranks at the different companies I worked at, I hadn't gone to college. I never went back. And I had no experience other than the places I had worked at, like up until that point of working my way through, you know, through the ranks. And the lesson I learned early enough that made me a successful manager was you have to be able to talk in terms of what's important to the people you're managing. And if those aren't aligned with the things that are important to you, it's never going to work. So surround yourself with people who have common goals or like goals. And then all of your discussions about your business together should be, how do we accomplish the things we both care about?
Yeah.
And it could come down to like not just what you're doing in business, but what they have going on in their personal life or any of those things. And the hard thing about like doing that as you move on and continue to succeed in any channel that you're in is that as you get up the ranks, you have less and less control over, you know, are you aligned with those things? And then it's like, okay, well, now I have to question, am I aligned with the goals of the people at Food Network? And do we have common goals? And do we have, you know, and it became very evident, you know, probably 6 months to a year into that relationship that like they had their goals and they didn't give a shit about my goals. Right. Which
and then you're talking about something that's actually kind of important and really doesn't get talked about very much because on the surface, it looks oh, this is the great moment, this is success and whatever. And it really is like with my companies now, like I always say, like it's more important who you work with. And even my band, like, you know, like we're not the best musicians. We have good chemistry and our goals are aligned. And that is way more powerful. People are always like, oh, why don't you team up with this guy, this guy, or whatever. And it's
everybody wants to super group you.
Yeah, the super group rarely works because it's got too many of the similar kind of people or whatever. You're not. It's way better to have the chemistry and to be aligned. And be more than the sum of your parts that way. And that's also something that can work long term, you know. And it's one of the things with negotiating. Like I've noticed, like a lot of people really misunderstand like what negotiating is about, because they think like negotiating is about like getting the best possible deal for yourself and fuck everyone else. I'm like, no, that's a really bad deal, because yeah, it'll be good for like a year or two and then it'll become unsustainable because the other side's gonna be like, this deal sucks, right? What you want is something where your goals are aligned, where like you're getting something that you're pretty happy with, they're getting something they're pretty happy with, and therefore after a few years everyone's pretty happy. Your goals are aligned, so you're not really butting heads too much, you know. And if there's little things, it's successful enough to where you can see the bigger picture and be like, well, it's not worth it, like we've got a good thing going, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say it's really important to work with people that you like and people where you have sort of similar values and similar goals, because you could solve so many potential problems or arguments or whatever. They'll just never happen because they won't come up. Even if there's something that on paper looks more lucrative or whatever, and you don't get along with the people, or you don't have that gut feeling about those people as much, you know. And this has shaped so many of the decisions I've made.
It's like being locked in a loveless marriage at that point.
Yeah, kind of. And eventually you're just like, okay, I either accept unhappiness or I have to break this off and start from scratch. And you're like, I should have just, you know, gone for the woman I loved or something, you know?
Yeah. In the same analogy, right. It's but that's the thing is, I was thinking about this earlier, and in a real succinct way to put it is like, I've never regretted any sacrifices, but I've definitely regretted compromises. And so sometimes I think it's better to go without, and wait longer for the thing you really want than it is to sort of compromise and then find out like, well, now I'm winning in a way that doesn't really get what I want, or it doesn't really make me happy, or it doesn't get me to where I want to be. And I think you see this a lot with some hyper successful people, Hollywood celebrities or whatever, where they're just like, oh, I made millions of dollars and I hate my fucking life. And it's like, okay, well, I don't ever want to get to that point.
Right.
Like, I don't ever want to be one of those millionaires. I want to be one of those guys who, and being hyper rich is like no longer a goal. Like my goal is like, can I live a comfortable, happy life doing what I'm doing and put my time where I enjoy putting it? And that to me is like, that's success.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, everything that you're saying is kind of why I waited, and also sort of determines, like I've started to realize, especially as I've gotten a little bit older, I'm in my later 30s now.
Yeah.
And like,
I got a lot more whites going on in his beard than I did at the start of the pandemic.
And when that starts to happen, you start to reassess. Like I always say, like it's kind of an equation of like time, money, and stress. Maybe oversimplified a little bit, but it sort of demonstrates like what it was like in my 20s. I had no money. I had all the time in the world, and I was pretty resilient to stress. So I'll trade time and stress for the money because I needed it, right? Now I have the money, but what happens is I'm still in this hustle mode because my entire life I've always had to hustle. It just feels second nature. Bad at saying no to stuff because it feels like, oh man, this is like the route to me losing everything and becoming homeless, you know?
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, you say that a lot. And that's, we call that in comedy, we talk about it a lot, called imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're going to be found out immediately.
Yeah. No, imposter syndrome dictates everything I do.
Which is why I laugh when people, like I have trolls that'll point out like, you're faking this. And I go, no, I have plenty of real insecurities. Talk about those. Like there's plenty of,
talk about the real insecurities.
Talk about the real ones that I'm really afraid of.
It's a bag of insecurity right here. No,
yeah,
every day it's a worry.
That's the thing, and I find, and maybe it's a little different with comedy, but like I try to be as open and transparent about everything that like I'm worried about or that bothers me or that I'm going through, and then I try to put some of that into the work, into stand up or into any of, like the short film stuff I do or whatever. I put it into Twitter, which is probably not always a great idea, but for me, it's like I feel like the more you kind of show people, I've had this saying for a little while now, but I think we're entering an era where authenticity is the most important thing. And I think you're seeing people react to it a lot of different ways. Like I think I deal a lot of times with the fact that I'm so open and so honest about things that people who have a hard time doing that really don't like it. Because they don't trust it. They just go like, I would never, if that happened to me, I would never share it. Right. So you must not be telling us all this, the whole truth about it, or you must be making this up because nobody would ever share that. And it's like,
right.
I understand that sentiment, because I think it is very, very hard for people to sort of authentically be themselves. But because we have like this Cheesecake Factory menu of these are the podcasts I like, these are the bands I like, this is the music and TV that I like. Now people are so much more, I think, hyper focused on like, not only do I want to love the work, but I also need to care about the person or feel aligned with the person. Right. And then that's where people go from being like a casual fan of something to being like a hardcore super fan of something. And so it might take longer to get there that way, but I think in the end it will be more worthwhile.
Well, it's interesting because you kind of highlighted something that I started my career in the transition of, which is social media and its effect on like, you know, artists and whatever. Because you gotta understand, man, I'm just a dude who makes music in a bedroom, and I always have been. But then all of a sudden you get put on this pedestal like you're a rock star, you're a guitar guy, all of things which I don't agree with or feel or even aspire to. But you just get sort of like called these things, and then people have access to you, because I've always made myself pretty accessible because, dude, I came from forums, and I'm a nerd. Like I came from forums and the internet, and like all the, you know, so chatting with people is just a thing you do.
Yeah.
And I remember like at first Sumerian really liked the idea of us being this like kind of mysterious band, and I was like, why? We've been everything but. We've like talked with our fans from day one. We're that band where it's like your buddy like is in a band, you know, he's a nerd just like you. We've met our fans, like some of our most hardcore fans are just like us, like just a bunch of nerds. We have a good time, you know, nerds all get along.
I think that unrivaled access is what makes Periphery too. Like, you know, the documentaries on making the albums to me is what makes the band so interesting. And not only that, but like there's some of the best fucking home shot, you know, like self-made documentary films on the internet. So it's like, and is that Mark's brother that produces those?
That's Jeff. He's amazing. He like literally figured out how to do it by doing it. Like he could see him sort of like learn and get better.
Yeah.
But those are there for posterity. I like those too, because like it kind of reminds you of these moments that can be forgotten. You know, I don't have the best memory, and I remember that those were really fun sessions with some of my best friends in the world. So it's good to be able to reflect on those.
A lot of you guys walking around playing Pokemon.
yeah. But here's the thing is, by being accessible, then also the other half of that is now you're not a mystery, and you're not this like superhuman. You're now a person with insecurities and problems and thoughts and all these things. And now you're presented with the whole image, and like the authenticity at this point is rewarded. Mostly, I'd say, like you get cases like you're talking about where people aren't ready for it. But I think what we're seeing is like the dynamic changing before our very eyes.
Yeah.
And it's sort of redefining what people on pedestals are, and you know the public's relationship to that. And so maybe we're seeing a bit of the growing pains is all. I think it'll eventually come around. I think people do want authenticity. I do think people want to see that we're just people. But like I think it's a bit of a transition for everybody, so it takes a little bit of time for them to adjust to it. That's all.
Yeah, and you know, I think it's kind of a cool thing to live through that change, right? Because you're also watching like companies and brands and these large organizations try to figure that out in real time, right? Because they'll have a lot of these things that like that's why you'll see them sort of like trend jacking, or they'll jump on social causes or whatever, because they think like, well, this will get people to drink Pepsi,
because they don't understand it. They surface level understand what's going on. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Real quick question I have to ask you, because this has come up. Let's talk about how Josh bought his Twitter followers. Did you buy Twitter followers?
No, I've never bought Twitter followers.
Do you swear?
What
do we swear
on? I swear on a copy of Hail Stan.
There we go. Well, hey, no, that's me. Swear that's a Rode microphone, right? I recognize that.
Yeah, this is a Rode Podcaster, which is
I have a Rode Broadcaster because I've got a better PR guy than you do.
Oh you do.
My voice is clearer and a little bit more crisp.
Yeah, this is I've
had
this
on your
Rode
microphone that you haven't bought Twitter followers. and
Yes,
that company will fail tomorrow if you're lying.
I swear on road microphones.
Well, there you go. He swore on the road micro. Okay.
Yeah.
And everyone keeps talking about you being an Uber driver.
Yes.
What's your worst Uber customer story?
Oh God, there's several. There's several bad ones.
Just pick one at random.
Can I give you a bad one that has a happy ending?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So one of the early years. So I've done Uber from 2013 up until the start of the pandemic, and then I did a little bit before Christmas last year to hit some bonuses. But I really haven't done it since the pandemic started. But I will say, I was one of the first dudes in Uber. So the way it happened for me was I was working for this company that I got recruited to go be a director of operations for in 2013. And then about 90 days into the job, I found out that they weren't doing the benefits the same way for same-sex domestic partners. Now, my girlfriend is a lady woman, but we figured out the loophole in California to register as register as domestic partners to get her on my benefits when I was working for Sean John. And then when I got recruited to this other company, one of their big sales pitches for the job was, we're going to pay all your benefit premiums for you. And I was like, dope, that's a pretty good perk. You know, that's like an extra $5-10 grand a year in benefit premiums. So then when 90 days comes by and I go to sign up for benefits, I can't. And I talked to the benefits administrator and I go, why can't I sign my girlfriend up on my benefits? We're registered partners. And this was before Obama's universal marriage equality thing in 2014 or 15, whenever that happened, which kind of changed the way HR laws worked. But they were like, we just don't do that. We don't acknowledge anything other than actual marriages in terms that I was like, well, that's illegal in California, so that's going to be a problem. So I kind of blew the whistle on that. And not only that, but I knew two of the guys I wanted to hire to come work for me had worked for me at Crocs, gay guys who were both in registered partnerships. And I was like, they're going to have a fucking problem with this too. So the company, when I brought it up to them, was like, hey man, we didn't know this. We'll get it rectified. Like, we'll fix it. It'll be, we'll handle it. We'll get it all taken care of for you. And a week later, they fired me, and they said it was because of my stand-up clips on the internet. And they were like, we just found out about these. I go, we talked about it in the interview that I've been a comic on the side and as a hobby. And, and so in 2013, I got fired from that job. First time I had ever been fired from a job. I had to get a lawyer. I sued them. We ended up settling out of court 18 months later. But I had been taking Ubers in my business travels, and I had just bought a new car. So I was like, fuck it. I'll just start doing Uber, and I'm all in on comedy. I'm just going to be all in on comedy now. And that's what I did. And but it was like probably 6 months into the gig, I picked this girl up at a place called Shore Bar, I guess that's still technically Santa Monica. It's like on your way to Malibu. I don't know if you've ever been on the West Coast or you ever been through like Malibu or Santa Monica area.
Yep, I have, yeah.
But Shore Bar is like this little kind of locals bar on Windward, or not Windward, what is that fucking channel? It's like on the PCH as you're going from Santa Monica to Malibu, and you duck into the right, and there's this like little bar there. The front of it looks like a ship. And I pull up, and this couple of people come over and they go, we're bringing our friend to put in your car. And anytime somebody comes and goes, the ride's not for me, it's for someone else, you're like, fuck, this is going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
So they carry out this girl who's like 20, maybe 22. And I assume she's at least 21 because they're bringing her out of a bar. I later find out she's not. And they just dump her in the back seat. They go, listen, she's really shit-faced, but she already threw up, so she's fine. Take her to get fast food and then take her home. And I was like, okay. So I'm trying to talk to this girl and keep her awake. And then she's like, take me to fucking Taco Bell. So I take her to Taco Bell and I'm like, what do you do? And she's like, I'm an actress. I've been in, she starts listing off movies. She's like, I was in Jersey Boys. I had a small part in Jersey Boys. I had a small part in Gran Torino. It's fine. And she's like, I'm just, I'm trying to break into the business. And I go, that's cool. And so I try to keep her awake so she doesn't fall asleep. We get to Taco Bell. She's like, demands I order food. She's like, if you don't order food, I'm going to kill myself in the back of your car. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this girl's a nightmare. She gets to the window. She starts screaming at the people at the window. Why don't you have French fries? You used to have French fries. I was like, listen, as a fat man, I could tell you Taco Bell's never had French fries. It wasn't until a few years later that they got French fries. So then I'm talking to her. She eats the food. She eats everything that she ordered, including what she told me to get. She just plows through all of it. And I drive her, and The address wasn't in. Back then, you didn't have to put the destination address in. So she had, the reason I didn't want her to fall asleep was because I didn't know where I was supposed to take her. And so she's directing me. She's sobering up. We get to Bel Air, which I don't know if you've ever been to, but it's like Bel Air Estates is like a gated community over by UCLA. So we pull in and she's like, it's right here. We drive up and you start to see like Jurassic Park looking gates for these fucking mega mansions, super rich people.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, oh my God, this girl's probably like the wife of some famous person or director, producer or something. We pull up to the house and I go, is it this one? She goes, no, that's my dad's. I live next door. And I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like these are like mega wealthy people. So she gets out of the car. I look back. My whole fucking back seat looks like a taco bar. It's like lettuce, cheese, sour cream spills everywhere. I'm just like, listen, at least it's not puke, right?
Right.
So she's walking. She's like, I can't. She gets to the gate, and I just was like, I'm not gonna pull away until I see her get into her gate. And then she's fumbling around. She comes back. She's like, oh my God, I just realized I left such a fucking mess in the back of your car. She's like, let me tip you. Let me give you a tip. I'm sorry. She's like, I'm drunk. I didn't mean for this to happen. So she just hands me what looks like a 20, and I go, cool. $20. That's fine. I'll just go to the gas station, wipe all this up, and get back to work. I drop her off. She goes inside. She mentions her name to me as we're driving, that her name is Francesca. I have no idea, right? But my girlfriend is like an encyclopedia of celebrities. And so I drop her off. She goes in her down. Like, by the way, when the gate opens, it's literally like the Wizard of Oz fucking road to get to the entrance of the place. I'm just like, who is this chick? So I call my girlfriend and I go, hey, would you know an actress like around the age of 20, 21? And she was in like Jersey Boys, Gran Torino. I named a couple other movies. She goes, do you know whose movies those are? I go, no. She goes, those are Clint Eastwood's movies, and that's his daughter, Francesca Eastwood.
Oh my God.
And I was like, get the fuck out of here. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, I didn't even know he had kids that age. She's like, yeah, he has 2 daughters, one with this woman, one with the other woman. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So I was like, oh, Jesus, well, she could have tipped me better than 20. And I opened it up, and literally there was 100 inside the 20 that she had handed me. So I was like, cool, I just made $120 to clean up Taco Bell.
Good gig, man.
Yeah,
like
so
that is a happy ending.
The end of this is the Eastwoods are wonderful fucking people. Let me just put that on the record. But yeah, I've had all the horrible stories. I've had 2 gay guys try to blow each other in the back seat, which is like, it's like, listen, I don't want to tell you can't do that, but you can't do that in here. You know what I mean? Like, I have no cocks out policy in the back of my car. I've had people throw up. I had an SUV.
I imagine you have people throw up. That would suck.
Yeah,
they pay a fee, right? They pay a cleanup.
Yeah, they pay. It's like it used to be like $300. Now I think they cut it in half. It's like $150 or something.
Puke is now cheaper to clean up. What do you?
But I always tell. So it got to a point. I was driving an SUV for a period of time where I was like, oh, I'll do black car. Like, I'll invest some of the money that I made from my show and I'll buy a black car SUV so that when I do Uber, I'll make even more money and I can work less hours. And that backfired horribly because what you find out is that those rides take so much longer because those guests are so much more high maintenance.
Oh, really?
And then your expenses are way higher. Like your overhead on your vehicle is higher. Like the first time I went to get the brakes changed on the Land Rover, they were like, it's going to be $2,600. I was like, holy fuck, dude.
Yeah.
So it was just like,
don't do black car.
Yeah. It was like, that was a big mistake. And by the way, in the year of doing black car, I had more people throw up in that year in the SUV with a higher level clientele than I had in the entire first 7 years of driving.
I'm somehow not surprised by that though.
Yeah, it's like literally, it's literally like the higher caliber people, the more wealth, the shittier they are to deal with.
Could have maybe guessed that.
Yeah,
this chat is going off here, man.
Yeah,
these guys both love and hate you.
Yeah.
Am I being held hostage? No, I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, you guys don't realize this room is another room in my house. I kidnapped him and put him in the spare room, and also went to his own place and got all his gear and his signature guitars, and then I kidnapped those as well.
Yep. Please just let me know if my daughter's safe. That's all I want.
Oh, there we. I have no idea. I didn't even do that much research, so now we got a problem. I thought I might have to feed some goldfish or something. This is
ask
a
you
wrinkle
about your N-word controversy. Everyone says that you love the N-word now. We're not going to talk about that, apparently.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, but by the way, which one?
Which one? Right? There's too many.
Way too many to talk.
So
about.
a lot of wow, great riffing. Let's see. Ask him about what? What are we at? 21 viewers beats 1. Thank Mike for that. Your fans hate you, huh?
Yeah.
But they love to watch you. You know, this is interesting. It's what happens. You don't get haters unless you're doing something right, though.
That's what they say, right?
That's what they say. You may be the first example where I've seen that to be challenge, right?
That is a perfect way to end the first half of the show, man. Well, that's great. Misha, before we move into the bonus section, which I definitely want to get into because we have some fun questions for that as well. And I have a fan question for you as well that my buddy Gary wanted to ask, which is a very deep cut tech thing. And by the way, I'm very happy that we got an hour and 15 minutes into this and I didn't get into a gear nerd out with you because I was like, all morning, I'm like, do not get into talking about guitars.
I'll talk about guitars and gear all day long.
Yeah,
man.
dude. I mean, like,
another hour on
I
that.
am so like, I wish I got hyper obsessed about things that could help my career. When I was a kid, I got hyper obsessed with motorcycles and I was like a walking encyclopedia of motorcycles. And then it's the same thing with like guitars. I got that into guitars, but literally with any of the other gear, like with like recording stuff or any of that shit, I am so full retard with that stuff. I have no idea. If people are like, oh, do you know, like, I remember when Axe Effects first came out, which I know what it is now, but I was just like, what the fuck is that? And they're like, oh, it's like every amp that ever existed in one box. And I was like, what? That sounds great. Like, how does it work? And they go, yeah, you can. And I remember when my friends in 3 Pill Morning were like, dude, you can literally program all of your effects and the changes. And I was like, how the fuck would you do that if somebody's off time? Like, wouldn't it just like, yeah, there'll be a delay, it'll be off, but you can still automate everything. And I was like, that's what we do. That's literally what we do. I know it sounds, and to me, it sounds
it's
like space shit.
It is, because what happens, like I kind of help popularize that. So
Wyandotte says Josh plays a BC Rich. That is the most insulting thing that anybody has fucking said.
That's actually pretty insulting
on this podcast.
You can get away with it. He's racist.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I would never play a BC Rich, by the way. I do have my limitations.
That's worse than the racist comment, really.
It really is. I would rather be accused of being racist than accused of owning a BC Rich.
Playing photographic evidence.
Yeah, you find a picture or a tweet of me holding a BC Rich, and I'll show you a bad Photoshop.
Yeah, there we go. now you're giving them ammunition. But no, but the Axe Effects, it's interesting because you know I helped sort of popularize that a little bit, and I loved it. I was like, you know, coming from all these like kind of worse or shitty modelers, I was like, man, this is the best thing ever. And I like to deep dive in all the tech stuff. But I spent time with it, and then like people would buy it because they saw I use it, and they're like, all right, how do I use this?
Right.
I'm, like, dude, I'm not tech support here. I never told you to buy this.
I know, right?
Like I just said I use it. I love this thing.
That was an interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because that was a question I had. I was like, God, I wonder how many people are just like, Misha, how do I use all this gear?
Oh yeah. So then I started to be less precious about presets. We did a tour with Deftones, and Steph from Deftones had put all his presets. I'm like, man, that's so crazy. Because to me, that was like a very precious thing. It's like, I put all this time into it. It's kind of my sound. He's like, that's not your sound. It's like, they're not going to sound like you. If you play through my rig, you're going to sound like you too. I was like, all right, that's fair enough. So I put my presets up, right? And like, I thought, cool, that will finally get rid of that. There, you've got exactly what I use. I didn't even bullshit it. I put whatever my latest rhythm and clean and lead patches were or whatever. And then still people are like, how do you get this thing to sound good? I'm like, dude, at this point, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, I'm giving you everything that I use, but you know, I don't think there's anything you can do to avoid that question.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like an inevitable byproduct, I think, of just you being having so much sort of pioneering in terms of like gear and stuff like that. But I will say, I was like, you missed the perfect opportunity. People go, how do I make it sound like that? Horizon Devices. Go
Well,
check it out.
That was before Horizon Devices. That was well before Horizon Devices.
Yeah.
Now that's the answer.
That is the. And by the way, I love how many people just are like, yeah, you just buy Horizon, and it just gives you that little extra thing that you're missing.
It actually does. I could go into detail why, but yeah.
But yeah, before we get out of here, we get into the bonus show. You have any stuff you want to plug or
no?
anything you got
I'm not.
coming up for the people?
I'm gonna plug Topo Chico and send me more.
There you go.
Topo Chico.
You heard it, Topo Chico. Get on it.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, we'll jump into the bonus show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hey, even if you hate me, I just love that you're here watching and hanging out with us.
These guys are interacting. They're at least you have. If you had nobody, that would be bad. But you have a lot of. We've
done those before too. Well, sometimes it depends because sometimes we'll do these. I've played around with doing it only behind the paywall when we do the live recording, and then I put it out on all the feeds. But like I told you, I'm trying to segue into a zero touch process when it comes to putting stuff out. So now I've just been like, I'll just record it and try to produce it live the way that it needs to go up so that
this is good. Real quick, every time Josh talks, I mute the stream. That's great.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a preset you can set up for that.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. It just recognizes your voice and
this guy Tommy Glover.
I just want to know that person.
Josh is banned from Applebee's for repeatedly calling a waitress the N-word for confusing regular wings with boneless wings. Google it. First of all, we don't have Applebee's in California. That could happen. I did have a. We did have to change waitresses at a Buffalo Wild Wings one time because she walked up on me and another comedian like riffing a bit, and the content of the bit taken out of context like made her super uncomfortable. And so she was like, "I don't want to be your server anymore." We're like, "Can we get one that's not so
if you
uptight?"
ever offend someone, you could just say you're working on a bit. I'm gonna steal that. If ever I offend one, I'd be like, no.
We're comedians.
I'm working on a bit.
Yeah, we're working on a bit for a thing.
Don't worry about it. I'm a good person.
We'll get out of here. We'll get into the bonus show. Thank you so much, man.